Welcome back, everybody. So today I want to go on a little bit of a rant about voice acting in video games. Now, it's not all going to be negative. In fact, the rant portion is probably going to be kept to a minimum, but there's a lot of stuff that I want to get off my chest. There's going to be a lot of constructive criticism. There are going to be some suggestions put forward, and I'm going to relate voice acting to some other aspects of video games as well, such as the gameplay. Now, this is all coming to a head because over the last month, I've been completely immersed in Xenoblade Chronicles X for Switch. I've been reading these posts on social media complaining about Pokemon Legends ZA and the lack of voice acting there and what Nintendo has offered as a substitute to voice acting. I agree, it looks pretty awful, but I have something better to put forward. And most recently, I read a Steam review for a game called Alliance Alive. This is a game that's ported from 3DS to Steam. It is a JRPG. And in their review, they had a list of pros, good gameplay, whatever else. And then in the cons, they wrote no voice acting. It gave me pause, and I had to wonder, where did we get to, or what happened to get to this point in time, where my majority of opinion of the past, which was, voice acting in games generally sucks, it's generally pretty bad, to now I feel like I'm in the minority. I don't want a lot of voice acting in games. I'm certainly not asking for more of it. And people are using it as a knock against a video game when there is no voice acting. Like, have we played the same video games? Have you played the JRPGs that I have? And have you heard the quality of the voice acting? Have you read the script? Have you heard the writing being spoken to you? It's pretty awful at times. Now, growing up, I don't remember if that was the case. I played a lot of games that, looking back, I want to say they were voice acted fine or they were written well. And that's kind of because there are a lot of memorable lines. Games like GoldenEye and Perfect Dark on N64, there's the character Elvis the Alien. And he was buddy-buddy with Joanna Dark, the protagonist. They had a lot of great dialogue. I think it was voice acted fine, but I can't remember that far back. As I got a little bit older and I got into the GameCube and I played on PC, Blizzard's games like StarCraft, those had a lot of really cool voice lines. And later on, I think I'm going to make a distinction between voice lines and true voice acting when it comes to long, scripted dialogue in these games. But those games always sounded really great, and StarCraft especially has so many quotable unit lines. Well, most recently, again with Xenoblade Chronicles X, I've got some complaints to make. But I think we'll talk about Pokemon first, and these posts that I'm seeing on social media. So first of all, with this specific example, this is actually something I saw in Pokemon Sword and Shield as well. Let's just say you've got this character and they're a rocker. They come onto the scene and they're really obnoxious. Nintendo's animated them so that they're playing this crazy air guitar. They look like they're having a little bit of a seizure on stage. And you're just meant to read however many paragraphs or however many lines of dialogue that this character's putting out. You might even hear these guitar sound effects, whatever else they're adding, anything, just, it makes it seem so out of control. And it's really awkward and it's a little cringeworthy to get through. But the solution, especially with a script and a story that's aimed at children, is not to voice act it. Because I promise you, no matter how hard it is to sit through a story of a Pokemon game now, it's only going to get worse. If you want to pick a Pokemon story and voice act it, Gold and Silver and Crystal, right? That one dealt with some more adult themes, a little more mature. There were the slowpoke tales, the capturing and the poaching of different Pokemon, the mistreatment of them, the red Gyarados in the lake. Anyways, I'm not going to say too many more. Who knows? Maybe it's a game that I shouldn't spoil for people. But that is a good example of a Pokemon game if you wanted to remake and voice act it. Not the juvenile stuff that we're getting now. Not the Scarlet and Violet misfits at school being bullied, which was so hard for me to sit through, and many other people who I talked to as well. So that is one instance where A, the voice acting is not necessary. The story does not warrant it. And B, it would detract from the gameplay. It would slow it down. You want to be progressing and focusing on the gameplay, especially in games like Pokemon with the battling and going through the fields and all this other stuff to do. All this action-oriented gameplay. And if I could stretch the example out to include platformers here, I'll take Mario. Super Mario Odyssey had more cutscenes and it had some voice acting there with, well, not true voice acting all the time, but you can imagine if a studio wanted to plan for voice acting, they wanted to go through the effort and have the budget allocated for voice actors, they're going to need to beef up those sections of their script, those sections of their video games. And all of a sudden now you've taken a platformer where you want to go from level to level fairly quickly, and you've bogged it down. And the developers might even look for more opportunities in the levels to interrupt you with voice acted segments that nobody asked for. So there is a potential negative consequence to these games when you want to focus on voice acting over the gameplay. Now again, going back to the Pokemon example and these animations, again, the solution is not voice acting. You know what works really well? You know what I like seeing? Emotive expressions. Just have a character like a Nurse Joy, have her there smiling when there's positive dialogue on screen. Have her, maybe put her arms on her hips when she's a little bit disappointed or frustrated. You don't have to go to the lengths that Pokemon has gone to recently where the characters are so animated and their mouths are flapping around like this to show that they're talking. You don't need to show that they're talking, period. Just convey what they're feeling a little bit, what that emotion is. Let the player read and move on. Anyways, I want to get to Xenoblade Chronicles now and what I've experienced with that game. I will sum up very quickly the voice acting as being good overall. I played the game in English. It was surprisingly good overall. But there were a lot of hiccups in the implementation and the execution, and that's what I want to focus on, rather than the dialogue, although maybe I'll get back to that at some point. So there's 3 major things that I took away in regards to poor execution, or examples of it. Number 1, there are these pauses at the end of the character's lines when they go to the next person's turn to speak. So for example, you have Elma, who's character A, and you have Lynn, who's character B. Elma says her line, and there's a half-second pause. And then it goes to Lynn, and she says her line, and there's a half-second pause, dead air, silence. And then it goes back to Elma. I don't know exactly what that is. I think it's maybe an artifact of the localization. So maybe in Japanese, the lines were running more smoothly, and then in English, they didn't want to have to edit the cutscene. The English dialogue could have wrapped up a little bit quicker, but you had to pause because of where the cutscene was. Speaking of the cutscenes, why is that an issue? Why does that happen in this game? Because you can't fast forward the dialogue. You can't fast forward the script in Xenoblade Chronicles X. You can skip the whole scene, which I don't want to do. I don't want to miss any important details, or you sit through it all. So this game that's already very long felt a lot longer because I was forced to sit through these scenes, which, going back to the writing, were really dull and very repetitive. The way that the main story is presented, I'll just fill you in very quickly. It always starts out with a mission briefing. So the team gets together and they discuss a little bit of what's happening, and then you get sent on your way. So, I don't know, I sat through this, 8 times, 9 times, they didn't change it up, where the whole team gathers together, the commander briefs them on whatever the mission is, there's no fast forwarding the dialogue, and every line has these little pauses at the end. So setting aside the quality of the voice actors and the voice acting, and even setting aside the quality of the script, it was just so boring and mundane to sit through. But there's a couple of other things. The mic pickup. So you could tell, at least I could tell, when characters or the voice actors were a little further or closer to their microphones. And look, if I do that in my little YouTube video, whatever, it's not great. I try to be good with everything that I do here. I know the lighting's a problem, the audio's a problem, but I try to do my best. You're not paying for my product here. I'm not selling you a product. When these developers are deciding to add voice acting to their video games, we are probably paying for it, or at least they are in their budget. You just wish that they could have some more flawless execution. And hearing the voices get a little softer and a little louder because you can tell that the voice actors are moving to and fro with their microphones. I don't know what the major problems are there, what the details of that situation are. Is it a fault of the equipment? Is it a fault of the voice actor? Is it both? Whatever. I'm just saying I heard it and I did not like it, especially, again, when you cannot skip through the dialogue. You cannot skip through the lines. The third thing, the unskippable cutscenes, well, I've already mentioned. I'm just kind of going by some notes here. But yeah, the unskippable cutscenes were awful. That was the third thing. The other thing about the mic pick, actually, I'm sure you've noticed this. This bothers me even more than just some of the spoken dialogue. When characters start yelling, when there's an escalation in a scene, you can tell that they're going further back from their microphone because they don't want to blow it out as they start yelling. In real life, if someone was right here and they didn't get any further away and suddenly they started yelling at me, like they saw a spider on the wall or heaven forbid somebody was trying to break in right in front of us, it would be loud, it would be rich, it would be full, it would be right in my ears. But again, I think because they don't want to blow out the microphone, I'm sure you've noticed this, when characters yell in video games, all of a sudden it kind of loses its richness. It doesn't feel like it's right beside you anymore, even though you can tell that they're speaking louder. So again, just a lot of these problems that I have with the execution of the voice acting. But we can move on now to some other aspects. So I touched a little bit about the story. I guess one more thing I could say about that is, you know what? A good voice actor is not going to save a bad story. And I feel like most of what we're dealing with in video games right now are pretty bore or mediocre stories. I'm a little hard to please. I know that from having spoken to a lot of people about stories in video games. I don't like a lot of video game stories. I've got a little series on the channel. Games with incredible features. I've only done 2 episodes. But anyways, I'm going to go on so many tangents in this video. I've only done 2 episodes until now. I want to do more. You know what I have not planned yet? 15 games with incredible voice acting. I don't even think I've started planning 15 games with incredible stories. So that says more about me probably than about video games. That's why I'm always trying to play as many games as I can so I can talk about more with you guys. But anyways, going back to the original point of how good voice acting cannot save a bad story, and I do not think that there are enough good stories in gaming to warrant more voice acting. That's the point that I wanted to make. And I do think, on the flip side of that, you could have a good story be ruined by poor voice acting. Not exactly the case in Xenoblade Chronicles X. That one had a little bit of a weaker story, but I'll talk about that when I do my review, I think next weekend. All right. I talked a little bit about the animations and how I would rather have something like an emotive expression as opposed to a character who's just kind of flapping their lips and being animated awkwardly. Let me talk about the types of characters now and how you might go about hiring your voice actor. So I think the 2 types of good characters to be voice acted are your archetypal caricatures, and I'm going to use Halo 3 as my example of both characters here. And then the other ones are your realistic and your believable characters. So for the archetypal character, or a caricature almost, Sergeant Johnson, right? That character is very much like the Full Metal Jacket military guy. He's delivering his lines with a sort of bravado and a sort of arrogance to him almost, sometimes a little pompousness, but that is how the character is written, and you accept that. So when your voice actor portrays that fully, you kind of interpret it as good or decent voice acting. That's what the character is supposed to be. That's what the voice actor is delivering. I accept it. Cortana is an example of a more believable character, which I know sounds funny because she's a little AI hologram type of character, but hear me out here. She's believable. She's a little more realistic and a little more convincing because of the writing and the voice acting. They didn't write her like a modern day millennial writer to be a jack of all trades with her personality. She's not trying to have humor and be quippy and be so smart and be so reliable and dependable, etc. She is a little more streamlined to be your assistant. She will offer advice when necessary. She's not going to try to be cracking jokes all the time. And so it's an easier job for the voice actor, but also think about real life too. That's a little more believable for the type of people you meet. When you have a gathering, a little party, and yeah, I'm going to go into a lot of tangents in this video, and this is one that relates to the voice acting, although it's not about it. I want to focus on writing a little bit. If you go to a party and there's 30 people there, not all 30 people are capable of being quippy and witty and cracking jokes. It's just not possible. That's not how we're made, right? We don't all have the same kind of social qualities. Some people are going to be a little quieter. You might not even hear people speak that whole night out of those 30 people, right? And there are just so many flaws with the modern video game writing where it's like every character has to embody a little bit of every personality type. Obviously, the script is going to suffer. And so what is a voice actor supposed to do in that scenario? You can have a serious voice actor, someone who's good at delivering a more dramatic performance, and then all of a sudden there are these kind of wisecracks that come out of nowhere, and the player kind of gets a little bit pulled out of that experience, right? Suddenly it's not as believable as it once was. I think that's all I have to say about that. Okay, I could kind of complain a little bit. I may as well. So I haven't played this game, so take what I have to say with a grain of salt. But the new Shinobi game that came out, I caught a little bit of a trailer, and I caught a little bit of some footage in somebody's review. And I heard one of the characters there. It was like an older guy, I guess, sort of sensei type of character. And the voice and the accent on this character was so dramatic and so overdone. And it was so deliberate. And you could tell it was a lot of strain for ProZD, I'm assuming. I haven't confirmed it, but it sounded like this guy on YouTube who I've seen a couple of his scripts. Of his videos, his little bits. I don't know much about him beyond the little things that I've seen of him, but it sounded like his voice, like he was putting on a voice for this character. Sorry, I'm getting all over the place now. It was not good. All right, it was not good. It was too deliberate, too over the top. But maybe that's how it's supposed to be in the game. I don't know. But I feel like even in that instance, it didn't come naturally to him. And that sort of inauthenticity, it came through to me, the viewer. Again, I haven't played the game for myself, but in the clip, among this footage, that's how it felt. He was really forcing the accent. He was really forcing the voice. And it just didn't sound like a real person on the other side of it. So you can have caricatures. You can have these dramatic characters, these characters that really lean heavily into their stereotypes, like Sergeant Johnson from Halo. But they still have to be believable. They still have to have these qualities that are reminiscent of real life characters. But I will give this guy ProZD some props as well, because when I watched the trailer for the game, I'm pretty sure that was his voice as well doing the narration, and it sounded good. I'm going to come back to these kind of celebrity voice actors at the end of the video. I think we're getting a little too carried away with giving some people jobs, and not everyone is as suited to them, and not everyone does as good a job as they might think they do. All right, so let's start wrapping it up. And some examples of good voice actors or good characters. I don't know the voice actors. You'll just have to look them up. And you know what? That's another thing before I get to the celebrity aspect. When I play the game, usually I don't know who composed the music. Usually I don't know who did the writing. I don't know the chief of this or the director of that. I'm just playing the game first and foremost. All right? I want the medium as it is in my hands and on my controller or on my keyboard. I'm not thinking about all the other people who are involved in the making of it because I want to be immersed in the experience. If I start letting my mind wander to who wrote this or who is that voice actor, they're so bad, suddenly you've obviously created a flawed product where I'm losing that sense of immersion and my experience is there's a detraction in the experience, right? Anyways, moving on. Good examples of characters. Edna from Bravely Default. I remember when I played that game, the characters were okay. Tiz was probably the worst voice acted character, but he was kind of lame too. Edna was really well done. One of your 4 main party members. Triss in The Witcher 3. Not perfect, but I really liked when that voice actor added the emotion and the inflections into Triss's voice acting. I thought it was really well done, more so than Yennefer's. Another good example, another good alternative to full voice acting. So I kind of alluded to this earlier. You don't have to have fully scripted dialogue. You can have voice lines. You can have a character like Mario just doing his wahoos and his jumping sound effects and those kinds of things. That is believable enough, and that fits into a fast-paced game, right? Grunting, Link, early Zelda games, Ocarina of Time. He's falling in through the air. You hear him screaming. He hits the floor. You hear him grunting. We don't need a voice-acted Link. Please, never give me a voice-acted Link. I don't even know if I'm going to watch the movie when it comes out. Just keep doing what you're doing. It works so well with that character. And I don't want him potentially being ruined by a bad voice actor either. I don't. The other one you could do instead of those little voice lines is babble. So in Animal Crossing, you hear the characters like, me, and you just kind of change the pitch and you kind of change the type of sounds they do. That was just like a me type of sound. You can imagine a little like female dog character, or you can have a big bird, I don't know, a big ostrich or a big bear character when you talk to him, right? Lot of solutions that are not voice acting. All right, let's wrap up on the bad thing and this celebrity culture thing. I'm not the most well-versed on this because typically I avoid this sort of thing. Also, I know I started the video talking about social media. I typically avoid social media. I don't like spending my time on there. So again, if you want, you can take what I say with a grain of salt. I might sound a little uninformed. But I do feel like there's a sort of celebrity culture thing happening with voice actors in games. And now everybody or most people know who did that character. Oh, everyone knows who did McCree from Overwatch because that's the same guy who had the Critical Role show on Twitch. It's like, I don't care. Is he good at the character? He was a very good McCree, I'll give him that. But that doesn't mean he needs to be given every single like leading role in every kind of Western game or this and that. And I don't know if he has. But we'll go back to that character or the voice actor for Shinobi, ProZD. You know what? You're more focused maybe on giving this person an opportunity. You might start getting into these connections that you're paying people back for. He was great as the narrator, but he did not do the voice of that old sensei guy all that well. It came off as very strained, very forced, and very inauthentic. And I feel like there's going to be this tendency where a lot of people get into these games for the wrong reasons, or they become fans for the wrong reasons. They become fans of the people working on the games. And I know that's existed forever, right? People want to follow along composers. People want to follow along Koji Kondo. But I would just caution against it. I'm not going to outright say it's a bad thing. I would just caution against it. Always keep the gameplay and the fun experience of the gameplay at the forefront of your development process. Once you start doing things like developing these roles or having these roles in your mind, these characters in mind, and you go, oh yeah, I know, that's going to be the perfect voice actor for them. Or, oh, I haven't worked with that person in a little while. I should probably throw them a bone. Maybe call them about doing this gig. If you're going to have voice acting, pick the best person for the job. Pick the person who can do that voice the most authentically. And if you're going to have voice acting, make sure you have a good script to go along with it. All right. I don't know how long I've been talking. There's a little bit of my rant portion for you. Guys, I'm willing to converse with you about any aspects of the stuff that I talked about, any aspects of this discussion. If you have your own complaints, if you have your own suggestions, if there's been things that have bothered you, if you're one of those people who thinks that, no, I do want more voice acting, especially in my story-centric games, especially in my RPGs, go ahead and write why. Go ahead and write what kinds of voice actors, what characters you thought did really well. Because you know what? We should also be rewarding the voice actors who do good jobs. I thought Geralt of Rivia, again from the Witcher series, I thought he was really good. He should probably get a couple more gigs. Then my hope would be I don't recognize him as Geralt from The Witcher. And this kind of happens with movies too, where, you know, if you have Leonardo DiCaprio in 10 movies, unfortunately, and this could be a me thing, I don't see the character that he's playing in that movie. I don't believe the character. I just see Leo doing another character. Anyways, I could go on and on about JRPGs, storytelling, writing, movies, TVs, all kinds of things. I will leave it there for now. That's my little rant. Those are my positive points. And I look forward to what everyone else has to say on the issue. And hopefully I haven't done that thing with the microphone, right? Whatever. Thanks everybody for watching. See you in the next one. Bye-bye.